right, Dale, the red light's on. I'm sure you're feeling the pressure, right? Are you okay?
Oh, it's getting hot in here already.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure. So quick question before we jump into it. What'd you have for breakfast this morning?
A Jimmy John sub.
Jimmy John sub for breakfast. Okay, all right.
I don't actually eat breakfast most mornings, so actually, that's what I have for lunch. So I think
okay.
I'm not a big breakfast guy. Guy. Whenever I wake up, I'm usually just bolting out the door.
Sure.
Or if I'm not, I don't know. I don't get hungry for another like 2 or 3 hours after I wake up. So.
Yeah, that's all right. Well, what kind of sub then from Jimmy John's? What number?
It was like I don't even remember what number it was. It's some like night Italian or something like that.
Okay, all right. All right.
I don't actually eat a lot of Jimmy John's. I was just like in the area, so
sure.
And they're so fast, you just like went online, the app, plugged in the order, and ran in 5 minutes later, grabbed it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's their whole motto. So I think we've done a really good Jimmy John's ad here to start us off. We've kicked it off really well there.
Right.
Well, why don't we jump into actually why we're talking? Why don't you do me a favor, kind of introduce yourself and tell my listeners what you're currently raising money for over on Kickstarter.
Okay. Yeah. So my name is Dale Backus. I've been a startup founder for going on 15 years. And so my latest venture is called Ohsnap, and we're essentially, trying to make the, products for smartphones and just our mobile technology. I just feel like there's a big opportunity here because, if you go on Amazon and you're looking for any phone accessory, for example, right, there's just a million different brands and options. The vast majority of them are, just Chinese brands you've never heard of. And so I just don't feel like anyone's successfully gone into this market and has wrapped up like a nice brand around, okay, if you're looking for something to solve your mobile accessory problem, I have a name in my mind that I go and I know and I trust and I can get that thing from them every time. And so anyway, we're starting out with the grip. The phone grip is massively dominated by pop sockets, as I'm sure everyone knows. Yeah. They're a very large company that sprung up, almost accidentally when they just really well timed it, when almost, just fell into it, so to speak. And it just has been the dominating player since. There's a lot of other grip options out there, but I just feel like it's one of those areas like where the battleground on the back of the phone is everyone's fighting over it. But I just feel like there's very, very few solidly well-designed, solution solvers, solution creators, that exist. And so we, I actually had a first campaign that we ran back in September was my first iteration of that product, right? So, I'd been working on that product for a couple of years actually while I was, working on my last startup. And we made that because I just went to a trade show. I went to CES a few years ago, and I saw Pop Sockets was there, and they were killing it. And there was another company called Love Handle that was there, and they were killing it. And that was a simple elastic band thing on the back of the phone. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, there's so much opportunity in this space, and I just don't think anyone's doing a particularly good job. And so it sort of stuck in my mind. And then one night I had this idea of using a slap bracelet mechanism. It's called a bistable spring, and it's like if I can I need to mute that, don't I? That is annoying. Sorry.
You're popular. Everybody's digging it.
Anyway, so I was like, man, it's like you need to be really thin, and you need it to not get in the way, but you also need to do all these things. And I was like, a bistable spring is super flat, super compact, but then it opens up into this very 3D structure that then you can manipulate and use. And anyway, so I built that product around that concept, and it took me a long time to figure out how to do that, which in hindsight is just idiotic because the bistable spring, long story short, is a very finicky sort of structure. It's not designed for just repetitive cycling over and over and over, like for hundreds of thousands of times. Most bistable springs have a lifespan of like 5,000 cycles, 10,000 cycles. We didn't learn this until like way too late, and so we launched this Kickstarter campaign in September. We did $460K on Kickstarter. We did another 200 or so in Indiegogo, and then it's a bunch more after those ended, and we shipped those out, went on our website, sold a bunch there, and then we started seeing just a huge spike in replacement requests. Like they were breaking like crazy, and we were just like freaking out, trying to figure out, okay, how can we get our hands wrapped around this? Can we just redesign to make the band replaceable or something? Can we figure out some new way to process the metal so it's more long life. We built all these fixtures and trying to figure out, like, we were doing all this crazy cycle testing and trying to figure out if we can screen the springs beforehand before we build them to see if we can, like, weed out, like, the ones that are prone to failure. Anyway, long story short, we couldn't figure it out. And so this was in around February, this was all happening. And I was at my wit's end with it. And I was like, all right, well, now we're sitting on, a product that people want, but a failing business model because, when you're selling a $20, $30 product, there's not a lot of room for sending multiple replacements to people, right?
Right.
Just shipping alone eats up every penny of margin. So we were basically losing money hand over fist, and it was just unsustainable. So I was like, either we're going to run out of cash entirely, or we have to change something. And I was just kind of so over that design. And I was like, all right, well, maybe we can come up with something better. This is one of those classic, business stories you hear a lot where you find yourself, you had an idea, right? You tested that idea, and the idea was an utter failure. And now you're sitting here, the cash position's terrible. You have people counting on you, and you're like, all right, now it's time to pivot, right? Now what is that pivot? And it's like, it's just all hands on deck, just trying to figure out the right pivot and then figuring out how to execute on that pivot. And I was just like, let's see if we can make something better. And I'm going to give myself a month to do it because that's how close on cash we were. And so we essentially in the month of March, it's funny because it all coincided with the COVID thing. Yeah. And so we kind of got locked in our houses anyway. And so I was at my house basically all day, every day. And I was essentially flipped my schedule. So I was working completely because I have kids and, they're doing school and stuff during the day. And I live in a small house. And so it was impossible to do anything during the day. So I rotated my schedule. So I was up all night, going to bed around 8, 9 a.m. And I was just working every night, all night. I had my 3D printer on my table next to me. And I was just like grinding out, night after night after night, trying to figure out this new product. And we figured it out. And in about 30 days, and then we kind of, me and my partner Dave were both doing kind of like working in tandem, and we were kind of like designing things and meeting and talking about it and then going off and designing things. And we ended up coming up with what we came up with really, really quickly. And then we said, all right, we have this design. I think it's going to work. It's going to be durable. It's going to be much cheaper to make. So it can be, cheaper price for the customer. It's not going to break. It actually does some things that the other product couldn't do, one of which is wireless charging. Wireless charging was a big feature that we missed out on the last one. And so let's say we're going to launch this Kickstarter early May. We're going to make that the date, and let's do what we can to get to that date. It was like a 3-month sprint. And so here we are. We launched a campaign like on May 8th or something, because Kickstarter was really dragging their feet for us on getting the campaign approved. But we would have hit the date. We were ready to launch on May 5th, which was our target. And here we are. We're at 764,000 with 14 days to go. So yeah, it's going pretty well.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So, I mean, with that short amount of time, were you guys worried about like metrics for this product? Were you, to launch the Kickstarter, were you worried about testing it all? Were you trying to get any sort of testimonials or feedback? Like, it seems like that's a really, really short time cycle to of spin up a product,
Oh yeah, it's crazy short. I mean, it's crazy short. But I mean, that's if I have a superpower, if I have one at all, I think it's like that compressed timeline, pulling something out of a hat sort of thing. And I've been designing physical products for a long time. And it's what my last business, that I started 12 years ago was. And so I had a bunch of stories in that business where I did this very similar thing where, okay, oh crap, we're almost out of money. What are we going to do? Let's throw this thing together really fast. And so when you're designing a product, right, you have all these constraints that you try to build. I believe that the more constraints you put on yourself, the more creative you're forced to be, and therefore that's where like the real treasures can come from. That's why I think startups are so successful a lot of the time, because they have so many more constraints than larger companies. Larger companies can build whatever the hell they want, right. And there's no constraints almost, and so the creativity is just not as high in a lot of cases. And you have a bunch of people, stakeholders, and crap to deal with. But this is just like, the buck starts and stops with me. And so I knew very clearly the problem I was trying to solve. I knew very clearly the constraints I put on it, which were it had to be, actually I designed it in a way where one of the constraints was it had to be manufacturable in the US as a fail-safe, just because of everything that was going on, all the geopolitical turmoil and the China crap and the virus crap. I was like, worst case scenario, this thing needs to be able to be built in the US, because the last product wouldn't, like, you could not build that product in the US. It was literally impossible because of how many different processes it required. Or this one, you know, that was a constraint, the constraint of having a durable mechanism that, you know, wouldn't fail over 100,000 cycles or whatever, you know. And the other one was I had to use processes that are fully understood. Nothing was proprietary or high risk, like the biseal spring thing. We'd figure out how to cut that, how to bend that, how to process it, how to code it. Like all that crap just took time, cycles in China. Where this is just simply it's injection molded plastic, some stamped metal, and some you know, some compression molded silicone. It's all very understood processes. So there's really just not a lot of ways it can fail, and that was inherent into the input variables of the design itself. And so that's, and honestly, like sometimes the best things come out of situations like this when you're completely backed into a corner and you have a billion constraints pouring down on you, and there's only really one or two ways out. And if you can find that way out, you know, you can really succeed. And that's essentially, you know, what we did. And so, yeah, we didn't have a lot of time for user testing or anything, or getting testimonials, which obviously we would like to have had. But it was one of those situations where we just, you know, it is what it was, and we just didn't have time for it. You know, like the company probably wouldn't be here right now if we weren't able to do this in the time frame we were able to do it in. So
that's cool. Now, did you have any thoughts of not using Kickstarter and just start selling it on the website, or, you know, just because of COVID and all this sort of stuff? Like, were you thinking, why don't we just put it on the website, you know, or something like that? And start selling
well,
it?
The Kickstarter is funny because it's, the original intention for Kickstarter is almost very much like this. It's, you know, you have an idea, you feel very confident you can bring it to life, but you don't have the money up front, or you're not sure what the demand is going to be. And so it gives you, you know, a framework to test those things, and or to build that, you know, that upfront money or capital you need to go build the molds or whatever. And that's essentially where we found ourselves. Like, we didn't have the cash really on hand to actually go develop this thing, you know, the production tools and stuff up front. And so, you know, this allows us to collect a bunch of money up front, which is really almost like, it's almost like, you know, we're looking at it as orders, absolutely, but also almost investment money. You know, so if we were to start on our website, you know, from the time we had the product designed to the time it would have taken us to start getting money out of that design is much, much longer if it was on our website versus on Kickstarter. And there's just something about Kickstarter I really like. It's like one of the values of Kickstarter, especially with a startup, is it's public, and everyone can look at the number. And if you're confident you can do something good, or, you know, achieve a high number, then it's like, it just gives you this immediate clout, you know, like, you know, I'm a big fan of Shark Tank. I watch a lot of it. And, you know, anytime you watch an episode of that and someone goes on there and says, yeah, I've been on Kickstarter, like, oh yeah, how much did you raise? And if you say, like, you know, something even as modest as like 50K or 100K, they're like, oh, really? Wow. You know? And, you know, if you go on there and say you did $1 million, you're like, holy crap. And so like, it's different than being like sales on your website. Cause if it's private, then you can really say whatever you want. Yeah, they can audit it and whatever. But there's just something about just like the energy around of Kickstarter, the community, all these people are really like huge, like fans of the thing. Usually they're highly emotional. And so when you succeed, you really succeed big. But the flip side is if you fail big. And so we got a taste of that last time.
Now, is there any sort of hesitation at all because you're like a price per unit isn't very high? You know, it's not like $100, $200 thing. So you have to have a lot of volume, a lot of numbers. But is there any hesitation in your mind at all when it comes to that? Or you just, listen, we knew that it was going to be a good campaign?
Yeah, no, I mean, the first campaign, I didn't know what to think. You know, it was my first Kickstarter campaign ever, really. And yeah, and it was a cheaper product. And so, yeah, I was like, when I started the campaign, I was like, all I want to do, I just want to hit 50K. If I hit 50K, I'll at least like, I'll feel pretty good about that. 100K would be great, you know. And then we hit those numbers pretty quickly, and I was like, oh, wow. And so, you know, we ended up with 466. And I was like, oh, that was just way higher than I thought we would get, right? What we would achieve. And we learned so much during that campaign. We did a ton of things terribly wrong. And you know, if you want, we can talk about that later. But like with this campaign, we got to apply all of those lessons that we learned. And I went into it with a much higher level of confidence because we had that history. We had a customer list. When we started the first campaign, we didn't start from, maybe we had zero lists. We didn't email anybody when we started. It was basically friends and family, you know, and then we started working with some agencies and stuff. But With this one, we did 130K or something like that on the first day, which was all from just people that, had bought the first version of the product and stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know. If it was my first campaign or if I hadn't done one yet, I'd say absolutely. But now I'm like, no, because I know we can do it.
Right. Yeah. That's very cool. Very cool. So, for a product like this, what was the thing that might have been keeping you up at night in terms of design? I mean, that sounds like that's where your head is. Like, what was the thing though, that as you were kind of going through building all this, that you were just like, can I do this? Or can I make sure I don't repeat a past mistake like on the other campaign? Was there anything that you were just really worried about?
Absolutely. And always, the biggest thing is just, a good brand is a brand that, communicates a promise and delivers on that promise. Right. And it's become commonplace for brands to say, we will deliver you the world, and then in reality deliver you a grape. And that sort of, we kind of fell into that trap a little bit, even though we had every intention of delivering what we said we were going to deliver. And we ultimately did deliver the product we said we would deliver, even though it was a couple months late. The whole longevity, durability issue just kind of surprised us. So since then, there's like this chip on my shoulder to absolutely do everything possible to make sure that doesn't happen again. They say, this is what the product does. This is what we promised to you, and we're going to deliver it this time. Like, it's going to be on time. It's going to be what you think it's going to be, and it's going to last. And if you can do that, you can really create like raving fans for your brand. And that's ultimately what we try to do. Because in Kickstarter is getting sort of a bad rep in with a lot of people. And you read comments of campaigns that look successful on the front. I mean, if you go to our last campaign and read through the comments, I mean, it's a nightmare, and it's just, is that indicative of the overall experience of the campaign? Not really. But even if you go on other campaigns that looked really successful on the surface and you go read the comments, it's largely, a lot of the time, people on there swearing off Kickstarter and saying, I'm never going to do this again. You guys are crooks. You guys are thieves, and blah, blah, blah. And we still get that, people literally emailing us out of the blue or whatever, being like, you guys are thieves. You're terrible people. And that's just bound to happen. So that's the thing that keeps me up mostly, is just how do we convert the highest possible percentage of people, of backers, into, raving, super happy customers. Sure. It's because we never walk into these things ever thinking that this is like a one-time, get a bunch of money and run to the bank. Like people think like they see $460,000, like, oh, these guys are like laughing all the way to the bank. We lost a significant amount of money on that first campaign because we didn't bill shipping right. We totally just underestimated the shipping costs, and we ate about 100K there just alone. And so there's just so much that goes into logistics of fulfillment and supply chain and quality and QC checks and all the stuff that, and then tariffs were way higher than we thought. I mean, there's 25% tariff on this category of product into the US, that alone. I mean, so yeah, it's just, that's the thing, is just, I want to build a brand that makes great products. I know I can. It's just, you have to earn people's trust, and so that's my biggest concern.
Yeah. How'd you get into product design? What's your background? How'd you get into this and start, making products?
Yeah, I don't know. Ever since I was a kid, I just always wanted to invent products. I always tried inventing products, and I really started doing it shortly after high school. I mean, even through, my childhood, I built little things here and there. Like I ever heard of Lego Mindstorms? I was like you ever heard of that? It's like a robotic Lego thing. That came out, I mean, I'm 34, right? 34, 35. It came out when I was like 13. So it's been out for a long time, right? The first generation of that whole thing came out when I was like 13 years old, and I got one. And I loved it. I loved building little robots that could do stuff, and I was using that all even through high school. In high school, I made this robot that would cook me a hamburger, like when I used to go off campus for lunch in high school. So I would drive home and then make myself a hamburger on my George Foreman grill, and I'd go back to school. And so, but the time to do that was very tight, because they gave you like 35 minutes, right? The time it took to drive home, cook a hamburger, and drive back, I was always racing, I was like, it'd be great if I could just have the burger waiting for me when I got there. It would save me like 10 minutes. And so I built this little Lego robot that, was on a timer essentially. It was like, triggered, just turned, like basically plug in the Foreman grill, start heating it up, and then lower a hamburger into the thing, and then close the lid, and then turn off the power to the Foreman. And so I've just always just been that way. I always see problems. I always come up with tons of ideas for ways to solve that problem. That's always been just how I am, wired that way. And then after high school, a buddy of mine, we're both into videography, really heavy into videography. And we started a little video production company. And video production at the time, and even today, you know, this was back when digital filmmaking was just getting started. And so you could go buy like a 720p, you know, video camera for like $5,000, but it like looked, because like the compression was like really, really heavy inside the camera, and it looked terrible. And so we got really heavy into like modifying cameras to make them look better, like little cheap cameras using 35mm adapters and stuff. So I got really interested in doing that. And then I was always constantly building little rigs, like motion automation rigs and like dollies and little backpack computers to reduce compression of the files, always building stuff like that. And then one of those things I built was a monitor, because I built this rig to capture uncompressed video from our video camera. But we also needed a monitor that could monitor the video camera itself, and I needed a monitor that was small enough to like be on the camera but switch between the computer interface and the camera interface. So I built that monitor, and then I ended up turning that product into a company called Small HD, which I built over 10, 12 years and then sold it. And so, yeah, I don't know. I didn't really, it wasn't like a line in the sand for me. It was just always something I've been interested in doing.
That's cool. And what kind of like team members do you have right now around you to help kind of get these ideas polished and get them out into the world?
In like Ohsnap right now?
Yeah, in Ohsnap. Yeah, what kind of team members?
Yeah, we're a tiny team right now. It's me and 4 other guys. One of them I mentioned earlier, Dave, who's like my cohort on the product design stuff. So, you know, we work together very closely on just new product stuff, and I'm more on the front end of the development. He's more like the next steps. There's like concept and ideation, and there's like, you know, more of like the refinement of the product, and there's sort of DFM or design for manufacturing, which neither of us like to do, and we're trying to find ways to outsource that. And then I have an operations guy named Mark, and we have a media production, you know, graphic designer, website guy, you know, video creator named JD, and a marketing lead named Bogdan, who does all of like, you know, he's the one who primarily drove the creation of all the campaign assets and, you know, and that kind of thing. So that's it. Just me and 4 other guys.
That's cool. You know, when you're putting together, I think this is something that's challenging for a lot of entrepreneurs or people in this. How did you know what pieces that you needed, people that you wanted around you? I mean, you mentioned, you know, you can do video, it sounds like. So like, you know, why have another guy? Like what were you looking for in making sure that you put together the right team to get a product off the ground in short amount of time and then still have success with it? Like, what are you looking for when it comes to that?
Yeah, man, that's a good question. You know, a lot of it's just intuition, but for me, you know, having built multiple companies, you know, I feel like my role is, you know, as CEO or whatever, is prominently or mostly to have the vision, right? Which is really what I think I'm best at, is just seeing sort of 5 years in the future and sort of plotting a chart to that, right? And finding ways to productize and kind of chop things off, you know, to kind of build towards that vision, but also have things to sell on the way. I'm pretty good at that. And then, you know, that's like my primary role. And then the other role I have is essentially building the team and making and enabling that team. Like I'm a lot of CEOs, because they usually start by themselves or whatever. A lot of founders, right? They start where they do everything. They have, and it becomes really difficult for people to let go of those things. Because there's a lot of founders are OCD, and they're extremely like detail oriented. And so it gets very difficult for people to let things go. I'm sort of the opposite. I've never had problems with letting things go, almost to a fault. Like I'll like give things to people and then like be like, la, 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 you know, and just like, go do it. And so almost so it's really, really extra important for me to make sure I'm hiring the right people, the people that I know can work autonomously, that have the same level of commitment to quality and you know, standards that I do, because of that. And that's, you know, you can't obviously completely disconnect from your people, but it's important that, you know, they understand the whole vision and everything, but, you know, they also really work on their own, and it works really well for me that way. And I like building businesses where I'm not like the most, because I think it's partly an ego thing. A lot of founders want to build themselves into the middle of this sort of culture ecosystem where everything passes through them because it makes them feel powerful or makes them feel like they're in control, or important or whatever it is. But that is really just a bad way to do it, because now people don't feel empowered or enabled, or they don't feel like you trust them, or I don't know what it is, but I build myself sort of on the outside, and I let them do their best work, and I really try to enable people to do that. And in terms of actually hiring and knowing when to hire and all that, I don't know, man. You just you look in yourself and you say, what am I the best at, and what do I know I want to do, and where can I really add value, and be honest with yourself. Then you find the things that you're not good at, but you also know is important or critical to get that business to the next level, and you go find that person, which is hard to do, which is really, really hard to do. And I've been fortunate where sort of the right people sort of fell into my life at the right time. Honestly, the way this team formed is really weird, because I built a company over 10 years that ended up having like 80 people in it. And then I could have went and plucked, a bunch of people from that business, but it's almost weird that I didn't. But the only person I took from that business was Dave. And then the other three guys that kind of came to me in really weird ways. And so you look at those people and you go, wow, this guy would be a really good fit. And it's hard to resist that urge to like hire people that or that is comfortable to hire,
Right.
but you just got to hire people that are the right fit for the job you're looking for,
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's flip over to the actual Kickstarter and talk a little bit more specific around that. So, when we're talking, you got about 14 days to go. You kind of mentioned some of the numbers earlier, but while we're talking right now, you've got just under 20,000 backers, and you're at like almost 765,000. That's a lot of orders. That's a lot of backers. So, obviously, you came out of the gate strong with your mailing list and having a huge first day. But I think my question is going to be around, is there any nervousness of delivering that many products to that many backers, and the tariffs and the shipping and all the stuff that you talked about from first campaign to this one? Yeah. What are some of those adjustments? Because I can tell you for a fact, I've ruined a couple companies because of shipping, and we didn't calculate it quite correctly. So how are you guys approaching it this time to make sure that you're not doing a mistake again?
Yep. And so a lot of that goes into just having a lesson, a prior campaign that we can say, okay, here's what we did right, here's what we did wrong, knowing that going into it. So before we even started the campaign, we had, we knew the physical properties of what we were going to be shipping, and we had all the quotes, and we knew which companies were good and which companies were bad. We have a fulfillment center that we use I'm in Cary, North Carolina, which is near Raleigh. And then we have a fulfillment center in Durham, and then that does all of our domestic shipping essentially. Mm-hmm. So that is, we struggled with the first campaign in terms of, do we ship everything from China to Durham and then back out to, overseas in Europe and that kind of stuff? Like, that seems weird. And then we found a company called FlowShip, who is a international, essentially 3PL, which is based in Hong Kong. And that's what we ended up doing on that first campaign. We basically took all the US, Canada orders, and we shipped them here, and we fulfilled those out of our fulfillment center in Durham. And then anything outside, basically, the US and Canada, we shipped, to FlowShip, and then they shipped to Europe and Australia and Japan. Yeah. And that worked out pretty well, except the cost on all of that was way higher than we planned for. And so, like I said, we lost a lot of money. It was just some huge sticker shock moments of that. It was just like, oh my God. It was just terrible. And so, and then when we went to, after that campaign, went to our website, we learned a lot too, because we were, Amazon's created this everything needs to ship fast and free sort of culture. And as a small company, it's just, we don't get the rates they get, and we're not charging people $100 a year for Amazon Prime. So, and we weren't on Amazon. And so it's really the only way to get the product was on our website. And so it took us a while, but Mark, the operations guy, he over time figured out how to continually reduce our shipping costs or fulfillment costs to the point where we can now ship these things for a really, really low price from again, our center in Durham, our direct orders on our website. And so we went to the new campaign. We had all that knowledge, and we said, okay, we're going to do the same thing we did last time. Essentially, we're going to do US orders out of Durham. We're going to do international orders either with FlowShip or EasyShip. I'm not even sure what he's settled on yet, because there's another company called EasyShip that does the same sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And you can go to them ahead of time, and they say, okay, what are you shipping? How much are you shipping? Where are you shipping to? They'll give you quotes that are going to be accurate. That's going to include tariffs and customs if you want to pay customs for your customers or not, you want them to pay. Right. And you just have to know all that going into it. Just don't wait until you've launched your campaign to get those quotes and estimates, because you will regret it.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that was a huge lesson. And not so on the fulfillment side, I feel pretty good about it because we've worked with these people. We know how it's going to work. We know how much it's going to cost, and we know how long it's going to take because it always takes longer than you think. And then on the production side of that, fulfilling all these orders, I'm pretty comfortable with that actually, because this is actually the one thing I do pretty well. And I know these suppliers we're using, I've been using them for like 10 years. I know what they're capable of. And so, yeah, I'm not too concerned about that.
That's cool. Has there been something in this campaign that stuck out that you did not expect at all in terms of, like, I don't know, a country that's really popular, right? That's backing a lot, or anything that's been, something you just didn't expect?
Yeah, no. So one thing I didn't mention is that one of the decisions we made on this campaign was to not ship. We were a lot more exclusive into the countries we decided to allow to place orders. So like the first campaign, we basically said anywhere in the world. Huge mistake, because you end up with like two orders in Mongolia and like one order into Zimbabwe and another, and you end up paying so much money for those orders, and that's a huge reason why we lost a lot of money. And so with this campaign, we limited it to like 12 or 14 different countries. Basically, we looked at our first campaign and we basically sorted it by orders and then by country, and we said, okay, anything below whatever it was, 1%, 0.5%, whatever, as the total number, we're not going to ship to those countries, and that made things a lot easier for us. But in terms of what surprised me, I mean, honestly, just the how well it's gone has frankly surprised me, because like I said, our first campaign was a bit tumultuous in some ways. And, we went back to those same people and we said, hey guys, this is what happened. We were honest with them. And we said, listen, like, I know a lot of these orders, these units you're using are failing, and, and we're just getting to the point where we just can't continue shipping replacements. But, what we're going to do for you is, because if we had money, right, and we were in a much healthier spot, I would have just said, hey guys, if you back the project, the first time and it didn't go well, we're just going to give you this new product for free. But we literally just could not do that.
Yeah.
But what we did say, hey, if you back us, if you spend $15 with us on a new campaign, you'll get the product and you'll get another unit for free. You'll get an extra unit for free. And I just thought, some people would be like, okay, I'll give these guys another chance or whatever. Right. But the response was a lot higher than I expected, which is really, really good feeling for me. And so that was surprising. And just the overall how well it's gone in general has surprised me.
That's cool. Now, it sounds like, I think for both campaigns, you went with some partners, right? Some of the agency partners. Was that something you always wanted to do on this campaign too? And was there any conversation like, maybe we don't do it because we've already done them the first time and we've got a mailing list and we've got some or is it like, no, we wanted to bring on these partners?
Yeah. So when it comes to that, right, it's all about just what's your expectation, and then what's your strategy to deliver that expectation. Vast majority of people go into a Kickstarter with, a certain expectation, a hugely false idea of how they're going to meet that expectation. And, that's just the founder curse. We tend to be over optimistic, and we tend to think people are way more aware of us than they actually are. Right. And so, we knew we were going to have a better day one because we had a list this time, but we didn't know how that was going to go. And so it's always been the plan to have, an ad strategy where agencies were, out there continually pushing traffic to the site, because the way Kickstarter works, as is, you want to be a trending project. You want to be like, a lot of people go and click explore and then click trending, and that's how they just browse Kickstarter. And so you really want to be above the fold, which is like top 12 as much as you possibly can, which is, asking a lot because there's thousands of campaigns at any given time, right? But to do that, you have to have a consistent flow of traffic to your page, and you can't do that organically. You just can't. Even if you were guaranteed, like outside the algorithm, for some reason you have some special clause where you could be in the top 5 all the time, and then you weren't going to run ads, it still wouldn't give you a very consistent order rate like that. Or you'd be surprised that even being top 5 a lot of the time, the organic rate still isn't the majority of where we're getting our conversions from. Right. It's from ads. And so, it's just the reality of selling anything these days. It's just, you have to, unless you're, an established brand, you can rely on word of mouth, you're already shipping the product, that's one thing. But if you're selling something that no one's ever seen or used before, you have to promote it, and you have to get people coming, to create this vacuum and bring people into your universe. And so, Yeah, so we used Funded Today the first time, the first campaign exclusively. This time, we went back to them for the first week of the campaign, but then we also signed a backer kit who's doing a really, really good job. I've been really impressed with them with our Facebook ad strategy. And then we have another one called Impremise who's doing ads for us as well. So there's no reason why you can't use multiple agencies. You just have to go to them and you have to say, you have to work the deal and make sure the terms are good for both of you. And for us, the big thing I liked about Funded Today the first time is that they funded the ad spend out of their pocket, and then they just bill you for it after the campaign's over. So you don't need a ton of cash up front. And you just have to make sure that your ROAS, your return on ad spend, stays above a certain threshold. Otherwise, that can really, really screw you. But so we did the same thing this time around with Funded Today, and the other two agencies as well. They're all funding the ad spend themselves, and then we're just basically going to reimburse them for it after the campaign, which is a huge, huge, huge deal.
Definitely. Very, very cool. So, once this, the money starts dropping, after 14 days, what starts happening in terms of production to get these units into people's hands?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, all that's already happening. We're not waiting for the campaign to finish to do anything. We know we're going to have to deliver this product, right? So we've been working, even before we launched the campaign, we were working on all that stuff. But, right now, what we're doing most right now is just finalizing what we call design packages, basically the documentation you need to hand to a manufacturer to start making your product or whatever. We've been doing that. The grip has been done. The grip's actually already, the molds are made. I'm actually getting production samples of that next week. And so that was we were really ahead of the curve on that one, because that obviously is the most important. And then snapcharge has become really, really important strategically for us as well. We're seeing a lot of really good response. A lot of people are ordering that. And so we're probably going to end up having to make 15,000 or so just of those. And that's a little more complicated, because that's circuitry and everything. So I found there's a company called Klugonics that I think I met them at CES or something. And they're sort of there's a lot of these kinds of companies. They're like a turnkey, you have an idea, we'll get you to manufacturing kind of thing. But we really are utilizing them primarily in the manufacturing side. They have a really tight network of suppliers in China. They're all vetted. They have boots on the ground in China, so they can go audit factories. And for instance, we have this cable I found on Alibaba that I really like. I want to use a snapcharge, but are they good quality? Is the supplier good quality? This company can walk over there and say, hey guys, we looked at their operations, they're sketchy. Okay. And so that's really, really big. And so I partnered with them, on SnapCharge specifically, because I really just want to make sure that, that thing is delivered with a high bar of quality. And for us, being such a small team, it was just tricky I just didn't feel comfortable taking that on entirely ourselves. And these guys use factories that are already building wireless chargers for Apple and Samsung. And so they know what they're doing, and I can just trust it. It allows me and Dave to focus on, other things, right? So we have this ecosystem we're building. We introduced the stand a couple of days ago, and that had a huge response. And so I mean, it's every product kind of has its own timeline. They're all overlapping in various ways, and we're basically prioritizing it in order of complexity. So the grip is honestly the most complex, so that's already been shipped off to manufacturers. Molds have been made. SnapCharge was a close second. That's in the hands of a professional. We're doing the design and the ID, and we have to actually control the experience and everything, but we're just basically handing them a design file. From there, they're going to make the drawings and do all the supplier stuff. And then we have the stand and the car mount and the other mount, which are much simpler products that's what we're doing right now actually is that. So
that's cool. So what's the next 5 years look like for you? What are you thinking about continuing to make an ecosystem around the smartphone? Is it more products in that sort of,
yeah, man. We have a huge, chest of ideas that we're going to be bringing to life over the next couple of years. Ultimately, sort of what I alluded to at the beginning is I want to be Ohsnap. I want it to be a brand in this mobile accessory space that is a true, American styled brand, that has a good reputation for, hey, if you buy a phone, what's the next brand in your head? I want it to be Ohsnap. Like that is really the ultimate vision, because we're seeing a huge emotional response from people. It was really interesting when we introduced the stand, which I don't have anywhere around me, but when I introduced the stand a couple days ago, the response to that was like tons of people were basically saying, hey, I wasn't, here it is, this thing here, right? So it's got the snapcharge on it, and then it's magnetically, attached to this, and, it sticks on, and you can pivot it around. This is a pretty simple product, but when we introduced it, a lot of people were like, now, because you came out with this, I want this charger now too. Like, so we didn't upsell a new product. They went and bought the snapcharge, because before the stand, people weren't really sure how they were going to use it. So you give them this very clear solution. Now they're jumping all over it. And so I just feel like that's what the industry is missing, man. Like, you go on Amazon, you need a cable, you need a screen protector, you need a case, you need a grip, you need a stand, you need a car mount, whatever. You're just going to buy those things from 8 different brands, and they're not going to work well together, because the big problem people have is if you go buy a grip, the 90% chances it's not going to work with the car mount you have, and vice versa, and or the case. Now the case, supplants your grip, or the case now doesn't fit in your car mount. It just constantly is this endless cycle of like deprecation and repurchasing. And so if someone that can actually come into the space and think about sort of all the ways we use our mobile devices, and make sure every product we introduce is intentionally thought through to where, okay, well, if they buy any product from us, it's going to work well with all the other products they buy from us. And you're never going to have to go, oh, well, crap, now I have to rebuy this thing or that thing.
Right.
And that's really the vision for the company. I'm surprised. There are some brands that are kind of doing it, but none of them really have like that brand power, that, like Mophie comes to mind, and a couple other ones that they're slipping my mind now. But yeah, so anyway, we have a lot of products like batteries and cases and other mounts and tablet accessories, and so yeah, it's gonna be a busy few years.
Yeah, I mean, you're preaching the choir here. I just upgraded to the AirPod Pros, and it like broke like 3 of my accessories because they don't fit now. And I was like, well, dang it! And then you got to buy the whole. It's like, oh, that sucks.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, so I've been ending all my podcasts since we've all been in lockdown for a while with sort of like some simple questions that are nothing to do with Kickstarter, nothing to do with crowdfunding, more of like a lightning round. So if you're game for it, I'll send them your way. You in?
Yeah.
All right. What have you been watching in the Netflix land or the Hulu land or HBO land? What have you been watching that's caught your fancy?
Yeah, I've been through a couple series with my wife. We were watching Traveler. There's a show on Netflix called Travelers that it's 3 seasons long. It got canceled, but it's a really cool show about like time travel and whatnot. We watched through that. And I'm like one of those people that I tend just to watch a lot of reruns. And so like my go-tos like The Office, How I Met Your Mother, That 70s Show. So I just kind of like watch that stuff a lot, but I haven't really watched a ton of like new cool. I probably have. I just can't think of it right now. But Travelers is the most recent one. It's a pretty good show.
Okay. How about a movie? Have you watched a movie recently that you enjoyed?
Oh, I know. I honestly haven't. Like I don't. No? We don't really watch a lot of movies these days. Okay. Yeah. Actually,
either do I.
I did watch the latest Star Wars, like the last Star Wars that came out. I watched that recently. That was quite good. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The movies are, once I got small kids, man, the movies they just fell out of my life. I just don't have 2.5 hours to just sit down uninterrupted of like, let me watch this movie,
exactly,
Yeah. Those days are long gone.
That's the thing, man. That's the thing. That's why I like shows better.
Yep. How about is there a podcast outside of mine? I mean, I know you're listening to mine every day. You're a big time subscriber, leaving reviews, but is there any other podcasts you listen to?
Yeah, there is. I listen to, there's a bunch. I'm a big Buffalo Bills fan, so I listen to a lot of Buffalo Bills podcasts, which I haven't listened to a lot.
Real quick, how do you become a Buffalo Bills fan? Aren't you in North Carolina?
My family's from Buffalo, and I actually lived in Buffalo for a few years when I was a kid. During the whole like Buffalo Bills, Super Bowl era.
Yeah, the Jim Kelly era, right?
Yeah.
Thurman
that's why I lived in Buffalo, so have to be a Buffalo Bills fan.
Yeah.
Huge Buffalo Bills fan. This is our year, I promise. And then I listened to a bunch of stuff like How I Built This, Masters of Scale, the Founder Podcast, Story Brand Podcast, Invest Like the Best, The Pitch, Zero to IPO. There's a bunch of them. I kind of rotate around. There's one called The Better Questions, which I like a lot. So yeah, I don't listen to every episode of all of those,
Right.
But when I listen to podcasts, I split through the subscriptions and I find the one that I'm interested in. I'll listen to that one.
That's cool. How about book? You read any books?
I do. Yeah. I'm in the middle of a book right now called it's called Never Lose a Customer Again, by Joey Coleman. That's a very interesting book.
Oh, cool.
Highly recommend it. And there's one I was reading before that called The Design of Everyday Things. Very popular book in like product design,
That's cool. Very cool. And my last one is, I mean, are there websites that you kind of frequent or go to just to stay up on either your industry or marketing, or just, just websites that you kind of frequent quite a bit?
No, I'm like, I really don't browse the internet on my laptop very much. Like when I'm using my laptop I'm working.
Yep.
And then on my phone, I spend a lot of time on Reddit on my phone.
Yeah.
It's like if I'm like bored, which is rare, if I'm ever like, in the bathroom or something, like I'll pop open Reddit and just scroll through. I'm actually I don't play a lot of video games. I play one video game that I really, really like called No Man's Sky. It's like a space exploration game, and it's like the thing I do that just chills me out. It's very chill. You just like fly around space and stuff. And so there's like a Reddit channel for that game. I spend some time in and whatnot, but that's pretty much it, man. I just most of my life is doing business, coming up with new product ideas, living, have kids and a wife. And so there's that whole thing. And then,
that's a thing.
Podcasts and books and
That's cool. That's cool.
Yep.
Well, where should we send people? I mean, where should people, if they want to dive into your guys' universe outside of the Kickstarter, obviously I'll have the Kickstarter link, but where should people go to just kind of dive in and learn about what you guys are working on?
Yeah. I mean, really ohsnap.com is the best place. But honestly, there's just not a lot about us as a company yet out there. And that's something we're going to be working on. We're actually right now scheming up we want to make some sort of, like YouTube series or documentary or podcast. We haven't really figured it out yet, but we just feel like, I've always felt like there's just not a lot of content that's like really raw behind the scenes of what it is to build a startup out there. Like If you know anything, I'd be interested in seeing it or hearing it. There was a podcast called Startup by Gimlet. Back when Gimlet
I loved it.
Yeah. Like that first season and maybe the second season were really, really good. Then they kind of got away from like that like really raw documentative style. And I've been looking for something either in podcast form or video form that I can't find anything like it. I think everybody in the startup community would really want to see something like that. What are like the honest, like behind the scenes? Because like you go watch like The Social Network, which is just like the John Paz version of Facebook. Well, yeah, I mean, it wasn't really like that. I mean,
right.
It was like loosely tied to the truth. But then none of the people looked like that. And so, it's like, we're thinking about doing something like that in the future because I think that it's unique content no one else has done. I just know I'm constantly telling my startup stories and to people because they find it interesting. But what if they could just watch it, There's actually a small documentary that was made about me and my partner in my last business you can find. I think it's on Vimeo. Do you remember what that thing is called, Dave? God, I can't. It's called the something story. The small. I think this is called the Small HD story. Actually,
that's cool.
I think if you go on, I'll send it to you later if you want.
Yeah, definitely send it out.
I'm drawing a blank on what the hell it's called, but it's pretty interesting. It's basically talks about the first 5 years of my first startup. And I was really young. I looked like 5 years old in it, but it's a pretty crazy story actually. So just because a lot of like how we got to where we were is very unconventional. It involved like doing some video contests for Doritos and the Super Bowl and losing a bunch of money in China. It's pretty interesting. So it's like 20 minutes.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean that Gimlet Media one or the startup, I sent that to everybody when it was. I was like, you guys, if you're going to be in business, if you don't listen to this, you have no idea what you're getting into. I mean, that one episode of the where they're working with the business therapist, and dude, I mean, it's more. It doesn't get more raw than that,
I know. That's what I'm saying, man. Like, I don't know why they sort of went away from that,
Yeah, I don't know. Who knows? Well, Dale, I'll let you get back to it. I appreciate you again taking time out of your day. I know we went a little long here, but this is a great conversation, great stories, and I know my listeners are going to totally eat it up. And obviously, you got a grand slam on your Kickstarter. I mean, and you still got 14 days to go, so still growing.
Right. We'll see
very, very cool,
man.
Yeah, yes. Go become one of the Kickstarter $1 million unicorns, right? That's awesome. Well, Dale, appreciate it. Thanks so much again for your time, and I look forward to seeing what you guys work on in the future, man. Thanks.